here. So we all know that that passenger rail ridership is obviously bottomed out. But just to give an indication on our Milwaukee, Chicago, Hiawatha service, that had record increases through state fiscal year 2019 with over 880,000 riders. That was a 6% increase from the previous year. That went down by 30% for state fiscal year ending June 30th. And ridership during COVID has been down about 95%. So we now have 4 round trips compared to the regular 7 round trips operating per weekday, carrying a total of around 300 passengers per day. And that reduced service of 4 round trips and 3 round trips on weekends anticipated through spring of 2021. So where do we go from here, and what do things look like post-COVID? If we could go to the next. So one thing we're looking at is telecommuting. And will there be a long-lasting increase? And it's more of an issue for routes that have a lot of commuters, like the Hiawatha service, where 40% of the ridership is commuting or business travel. So we're talking to Southeast Wisconsin businesses that we know are users of the Hiawatha. Some are saying they're going to go back to the same level of in-person office work as before. Others are saying that there may be an increase in teleworking, but we'll still need to travel back and forth. So ultimately, it looks like most jobs will likely resume in person when it's safe, but some employers definitely will offer flexible teleworking on a more regular basis. But more teleworking doesn't mean necessarily a net loss in riders. For example, someone who may be living and working in Illinois could move to Wisconsin and work in Illinois teleworking for 3 days per week and take the Hiawatha service to Chicago 2 days per week. Another thing looking at nationally is trends in changing commuting patterns, living patterns, resulting in potentially more suburban migration, or could we continue to see the increase in population in urban centers, encouraging more city center to city center travel? And then there's changes in travel behavior, really difficult to predict obviously in the long run, but there will be lasting changes. If we look back at the SARS virus, air and public transit in Southeast Asia rebounded about 3 to 7 months after the threat had abated to pre-SARS levels. But it's really unknown whether we're going to be in that same boat or not. Traffic congestion, will we see significant increases in driving in certain areas like Chicago if fewer people are taking mass transit? And then finally, investment levels in passenger rail. Will FY21 appropriations ultimately provide more funding to sustain service levels, or will an economic stimulus provide more funds for corridor development? Next slide, please. So we are planning for a comeback for passenger rail post-COVID. We're going to have the same issues of traffic congestion, parking gas, tolls, use of time, access to autos, young professionals wanting not to drive, climate change concerns, aging population. That'll bring people back to rail on corridors like the Hiawatha and long distance corridors. It'll slowly come back but I think there's an if here, if we have the frequencies in place. And I know that's a challenge when we all have tight budgets, but post-COVID, if service levels are slow to rebound to pre-COVID levels, the public may lose confidence in the mode. And then second, passengers have to be made to feel safe. Fear of virus needs to be addressed through more promotion of robust safety procedures at Amtrak. Amtrak is doing a great job with that, I think, now, but that needs to continue. And then the convenience factor of rail must be maintained and improved. Some examples would be reforming the boarding process to avoid people standing in lines, reducing the amount of time passengers need to arrive at the station prior to departure, ample low-cost parking, ability to choose the exact seat on the train. And Amtrak is working on a lot of these, some of those as well right now. So the rebound is important to economic recovery and competitiveness. Intercity rail plays a role in addressing the needs of for small communities to have the tools to attract and retain businesses, jobs, residences, so they have the tax revenues to thrive. Supporting local businesses and small communities, supporting large employer locational decisions, supporting families' decisions on where to work and live, enabling higher education in smaller communities to thrive. And we're hearing, I'm saying all these things because this is what we've heard firsthand from Wisconsin's smaller rural communities that are served by the Empire Empire Builder, long distance service. And that's what we're doing in Wisconsin with the Hiawatha expansion. For our part, we're continuing to advance, increasing this service from 7 to 10 round trips daily. The need for this is not just to add capacity due to crowded trains, but to provide travel options into the future for more trip purposes, whether it's commuting for work, traveling to a business meeting, connecting to a flight at Milwaukee Mitchell International Airport, accessing a university, leisure, personal business. This service will continue to be a vital need on the I-94 corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago. So it's nearly $200 million of projects, several in Wisconsin, several in Illinois. And we haven't been able to move forward with the whole corridor all at once to add those 3 round trips all at once. So we're moving forward incrementally. There were issues with a couple projects in Illinois, so we're now modeling alternatives to those projects. And then the federal funding programs, of course, haven't been large enough to fund a full, $200 million corridor program all at once. So we didn't wait for these things to happen. We moved forward with incremental steps with 3 grant applications for Wisconsin's, all of which were selected for funding in 2019 and 2020. And the next 3 slides will go into that. Next slide, please. One of those projects is the Muskego Yard Freight Bypass of Milwaukee Intermodal Station, $56 million project that diverts freight trains away from the intermodal station and through the yard. It essentially creates a new freight main line through the yard. This is now funded, and hopefully we'll be moving forward very soon. Next slide, please. The other incremental project we have is the Milwaukee Airport Rail Station's second platform. This also is another project that's required to increase frequencies, but also has, these projects have independent utility. This adds an important second platform with enclosed bridge access that you can see in the photo there, which allows freight and passenger trains to be dispatched on either track, thus increasing reliability and capacity on the railroad. We also have been selected for an additional single-level equipment acquisition for the Hiawatha service. We'll go into a little bit more about equipment in just a minute. We are continuing to extend the reach and the benefits of the Hiawatha service to other parts of the state. Prior to COVID, we launched a new Amtrak thruway service up Interstate 41 to the Fox Cities and Green Bay with 2 new round trips per day to Milwaukee, connecting to and from Hiawatha trains to Chicago. COVID came and hindered the growth during the first year of the NASCENT service, but we're committing to relaunching that post-COVID. Next slide, please. The Midwest states, together with Amtrak, are forging ahead with improvements. With Amtrak Midwest, the states have gotten together with Amtrak. We're promoting regional connectivity, improving schedule connections. Together with our regional partners, the acquisition of 88 state-owned cars led by Illinois DOT for the Midwest regional routes is well underway. This equipment is starting to be shipped to Chicago as of last week, and it'll be a game changer. And next slide, please. IDOT provided these photos of the equipment starting to be shipped last week. The equipment has, it has larger windows, ADA improvements, train line doors, passenger information displays, automated announcements, wheelchair lifts, center tables, window shades, retractable steps, Wi-Fi, and much more. So it's really going to change for the better passenger rail in the Midwest. Next slide, please. We also have the Twin Cities Milwaukee-Chicago Intercity Passenger Rail project we are advancing together with Minnesota. This will be a new state-supported regional corridor. Again, we'll create a 2 round-trip corridor with schedules that complement the Empire Builder. And so, you can see with this map, it really creates a multimodal backbone in Wisconsin, and that's how we're looking at this in Wisconsin and Minnesota, linking rural communities with the economic epicenters of the region, with connecting shuttles extending the reach of the rail corridor that you see in the purple dotted lines. 60% of Wisconsin's population would be within 30-mile radius of a station and 15 miles of a shuttle stop. Next slide, please. So we've taken a very proactive approach on this Twin Cities Milwaukee-Chicago project to advance this to implementation. In just 12 months, we have nearly completed environmental clearance and service development plan. We've gained railroad support and approval of the infrastructure projects. We've applied for and been selected for an FRA Restoration and Enhancements grant for operating support to help cover the cost for the first 3 years. And we've applied for a FRA CRISI grant back in June for final design and construction. And in doing so, built a broad support from elected officials on both sides, business community, local agencies. So we're working hard to wrap up the environmental service and planning by October. Next slide, please. And you can see the next steps with design and construction 21 to 2024, and hopefully service starting in 2024. Next slide, please. And then I'd just like to conclude by saying passenger rail expansion is never easy, including with the pandemic, but we've all taken ridership and revenue setbacks, but I think all of us in the industry want to keep pushing hard with within our organizations for continued advancement of improvement projects and initiatives to help create a strong, resilient Midwestern economy, environment, and quality of life. So the time is now for new equipment and stations, reduced and competitive trip times, improved reliability, and more frequencies. So with that, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak, and I will turn things over.
Yes, thanks so much, Arun. Wow, you know, Wisconsin seems to be very thoughtful in planning for future rail despite COVID.